Hello and welcome to Paint Along Studios TV. We'll be painting Quiet Koi Fish. We're going to need some supplies. We will be using some paper towels, some water for cleaning brushes, some styrofoam plates, and some liquid acrylics. We'll use white, deep yellow, Mars black, phthalo blue, phthalo green, and chrome orange. We're also going to be needing some brushes, a number 10 Filbert brush, a number 6 round brush, and a number 0 script brush. Let's start with the number 10 Filbert brush. We're going to get 2 scoops of deep yellow, 2 scoops of phthalo green, and 2 scoops of Mars black. And we want to mix this all together. It's going to be a very, very dark green, and we're going to cover the entire background with this color. I like the scoop and spread method. I get a big scoop on the end of my brush and then spread it up, down, over, sideways as far as it will go. And then I repeat. I get another scoop and spread it as far as it will go. I like to hold my fingertips along the black part of the brush, the black metal part. This gives you the most control with a good amount of flexibility. Plus your wrist won't get as tired. I want to fill in every little bit of the canvas, and then I want to even out the paint. I want everything to dry kind of evenly, so I'm going to go back up and down a little bit, back and forth a little bit, and I'm even going to come with the hair blow dryer and just sort of dry the surface. I don't need to clean my brush, but as soon as it's dry, I'm going to mix my next color right on top of the old one. I'm going to grab a big scoop of deep yellow. I might even add 2 scoops later. A little bit of white. I always kind of test the color first. I'm going to be scumbling, so I need to have a little bit less paint in my brush. So I'm going to squeeze some out. I'm going to start in this corner, and I'm going to scrub the canvas. I'm very lightly scrubbing the canvas. You're going to hear a scratching sound. It's going to go ch-ch-ch-ch-ch-ch, a little bit of a scratching sound. Okay, if you get a big solid mark like that, I'm going to go ahead and spread it out. I wipe my brush off a little bit and then sort of spread it out while it's wet. Again, I'm not lifting up my brush too much. I'm just kind of scrubbing the canvas, letting the paint be very, very thin on top. I have very little in my brush. If I need more, I'll either refill my brush or I'll just push down a little bit harder with my brush, and that will release more paint. But I want to create a few areas where there's just a lighter hue. It's like there's something lurking in the water, just a little bit lighter in a few different areas. You can decide if you want a lot or a little bit, your choice. I like to brighten it a little bit afterwards. I'm going to stick that brush in the water. I'm going to switch to my number 6 brush, get 2 scoops of white, a dab of phthalo blue, mix it together. I'm actually going to wipe some of this paint out of my brush, and I'm actually going to start with the white. I just want to have that immediately ready. So I'm going to make a small pile of white. I'm going to start making the basic outline of the koi fish. I'm going to use my brush, the full length of the brush, to figure out how long he's going to be, put 2 little dots, and then connect it with a nice line. Again, I'm using the white to do the whole koi fish first. I'm going to curve the ends just a little bit. Okay, and then I'm going to move 2/3 of the way down, put a little mark right there. I want to make sure this mark is a little bit longer on the right side and a little bit shorter on the left side. See that? It's a little bit longer than the metal part plus my bristles. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and connect it to the bottom. I want to make a shorter line and then sort of taper the edges to meet it. Okay, and then I'm going to do the tail. I'm going to have this line curve, and I want it to almost immediately match that line. This one I want a little bit further away, the one on the right. See, I'm giving it a little bit of space, curving it slightly. Then I'm going to go ahead and fill in the koi fish's body with some white. I can also clean up any edges. If your brush starts looking like it's a crayon-like texture, like especially along the edges, just refill your brush. Most of the time you just need a little bit extra paint in your brush. Go ahead and fill it in. I'm going to dry it. I'm going to put a second coat just so it's really, really bright. So again, I'm using the white. I'm just going to put a second coat. I'm going to kind of test my blue a little bit. I do want the white wet, but I'm going to test it to see if I need to darken the blue. I'm going to take a little bit, put it along the edge. Looks like it's a little bit light, so I think I'm going to darken it a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and add just a little bit more blue, maybe even some green just to make it a turquoise color. Just something very pretty, a little bit darker since the white is so wet. All right, here's a little close-up. I want to do a little curved line about at the 1/3 mark. See how it curves up just slightly? Then I'm going to come around the edges. I want to block off his mouth down there, so I left a little bit of space, put a little line there. And I'm going to add some blue to the edges. Again, I'm working on top of the wet paint. I'm not really making the coefficient any bigger if I can help it. I'm wiping some paint out once I got that initial outline, refilling with some white, and then I want to blend out that color. Okay, so that wet color is going to mix a little bit with the white, or I can grab some extra white and add it, or some extra blue. I kind of go back and forth between. I'm just trying to get that paint to rub, kind of mix in, so that it gets a little bit fuzzy, okay, or a little bit lighter. Okay, I'm kind of adding a little bit of a bump around his mouth area. I'm going to switch to this little tiny brush. I'm going to add a few little white details, so I'm just using some white. Right at the 1/3 mark, or a little bit before, I'm going to make a little curved line and then make it curve back just a little bit, leaving a little bit of a point. This is going to be his little fin. I like to do a few extra little lines and then smear them just a little bit with my finger. Same thing right here, a line that's going to curve back just slightly. I'm going to make it kind of leaf shaped, so a little point on the end and then it curves out again. A few little lines, and again, I'm going to rub it slightly. I'm going to give him a cute little tail. I'm starting on the left side, making it curve up, a little bit back, then the bottom as well. That one's going to be a little bit shorter, and then I'm going to connect it with kind of a jaggedy line. Okay, and then I'm going to add a few little lines at the bottom. I'm going to smear it with my finger, and then I'll do it again. I like to do it at least twice in the tail because it's so big. So a few more little lines, and then I kind of rub just a little bit. I don't have to get all the way to the tips. I can leave his tail a little bit see-through. I'm also going to add a little bump right here for his eye. Then I'll switch back to that turquoisey color, and I'm going to add his other eye. The other one is a little bit inside of his head. It's not all the way at the edge. It's pretty close. I'm going to add two little curved lines. It's almost like a little curved rectangle shape. I'm going to add a little detail, a little bit of the blue on either side. It's a little bump, but I want to make it look a little more like a rectangle as well. We switched brushes. We dried our brush, and we have 3 scoops of deep yellow, 1 scoop of phthalo green, 1 scoop of white, and 1 scoop of Mars black. You can adjust this color, but this is going to be the basic color for our lily pads. We're going to start with a small circle kind of up in this corner here. Then we want it to split, so we're going to have 2 little lines come out of it and then curve to the edges. You decide how much of a split, if it's a big one, a small one. Same thing right here, a little circle down there. A nice little split from the circle, curving to the edge. Try to make the shapes a little bit different. This one I'm just going to do a nice little curved line. I'm not going to worry about the split for this one. I'm going to go ahead and switch to my big brush. Okay, I clean it, I dry it off, squeeze the water out. I'm using the same color. I'm going to go ahead and fill in the lily pads. Not worried about the details I put in the middle. I'm going to get that back. It's a very simple shape. It's just a little oval kind of in the center and then the little lines coming out of it. But we're going to worry about that when we add the highlights and the shadows. But go ahead and fill it in. It's good to start with that number 6 brush just because you can get nice crisp little details. Just make sure your outline is a little bit thick so that it's easy to come with this big brush afterwards. But then you want to switch back. You want to switch back to that red brush. You want to add 2 scoops of deep yellow to the same color you had before and 1 scoop of white. That'll be the highlight color. The darker color, I'm going to get a scoop of Mars black. Maybe I'll add a little bit of phthalo green as well, just to some other part of the pile. I'm going to start with the highlight though. I'm going to get back my little oval shape in the middle and some lines kind of coming out of it, reaching for the edges, maybe not quite making it. I like to keep them a little closer to the circle, but they're fanning out. They're trying to reach for the edges of my little lily pad. I also like to get some along the edges. Note that the paint is still wet, so it is slightly mixing with the color. You'll see that some lines are a little bit darker. That's where it was wetter and it mixed. And some lines are a little bit brighter. I had a little extra paint in my brush, or I just happened to not mix as much there, had dried a little bit there. Same thing right here. I'm going to make this one a little half circle or half oval. Little tiny lines coming out of it. Okay, again, I'm going to get my edges. It just kind of brings the lily pads, helps them sit a little bit better on the water. We're going to be adding some ripple lines that'll help too, but this little highlighted edge kind of helps separate that from the dark, dark water. Okay, this one we don't have our little oval in the center, but we can make a few little lines coming out of that corner. Okay, then we want to switch to the darker color. We want to have less of this color in our brush, not a whole lot, and we're just very delicately, very gently touching the canvas, doing the same sort of motion though. Little kind of lines coming out of the center, a little bit of an outline around that oval in the middle. Just a little bit here and there. Nothing too extreme. All right, so clean your brush. Go ahead and get a clean plate too if that one's filled up for you. We're going to go ahead and get 2 scoops of chrome orange, a scoop of deep yellow, and a scoop of white. This is going to be some of our blotches on the back of our little guy. We need a shadow color too though, a scoop of chrome orange and a dab of Mars black. Start with the lighter color though, so wipe your brush out a little bit and grab that light sort of orangey color. We're going to come along his back a little bit. We want everything to start behind his head, so that curved line, make sure it starts behind his head. And I like to just make a nice big one at first, and then I can make some smaller ones. But just kind of give it a little bit of a curve. Nothing like a band or a stripe, so I kind of make the front a little bit different. See that? I kind of curved it forward to the head. I'm also going to grab a little extra orange, and I want to put it at the edges. Okay, and then I'll make a few more back here. I want to kind of line up the shadow color with the light blue shadow that I put at the edge of him. Okay, so I'm kind of looking where I put the light blue. However thick or thin I put it, that's how thick or thin I am putting this shadow color. I can also use my finger to kind of rub it in slightly so it doesn't look necessarily like a line, but it blends slightly. You can use your brush or your finger to kind of get that to blend. But keep it so that it's touching the light blue. Keep the light orange where it's touching the white. We're also going to add some black blotches. Don't have to clean your brush, you just have to grab some. Black's a really strong color. You can have it touching the orange ones or be separate from it. It's up to you. I just kind of add some wherever it feels natural. Again, behind the head. You can add some to the head, but for this koi fish, he has it all behind his head. Okay, and then I'm going to switch to my little blue brush. I cleaned it and dried it off. I want to dry my koi fish just a little bit. Okay, again, I have my little tiny blue brush. I'm going to go ahead and mix a scoop of deep yellow and a scoop of white and a little tiny dab of the chrome orange. I'm just going to use this to add a few little scales to his back, and I'm mainly sticking to the brightest orange on his back, so I'm not going to go too much into the shadow area. I'm doing little sad faces, and they're all sort of interconnected, so if I make a sad face, the next one will kind of start on top of it, or a little off to the side. It's almost like one little bump, and then at the very top of the bump is where the next one starts, and it curves to either the left or the right. And I just make a few little groupings of it, mainly staying on the lightest part of the orange, but it can venture a little bit into the shadows. We also want to lighten our black, so you can either use some white if your black's very, very wet. If not, make a gray. Notice how I'm using my finger to rub it a little bit, only in the areas that the black is overlapping or touching the white. If it goes into the blue or the side of him, okay, then I want to keep a nice dark black. Get a scoop of phthalo blue and a dab of Mars black and a little dab of white. We're going to make his eye color. We're also going to make a light blue that we're going to use. So 3 scoops of white. And we want to get 1 scoop of phthalo blue. First, we're going to fill in the koi's eyes, though. Okay, so we just have the dark blue, and we're just sort of making a little bulge or a little oval kind of bulge out of his eye. Okay, I'm going to add a little shine, just a little bit of white, and I'm rubbing it just a little tiny bit with my finger. Then I'm going to use some white to add some whiskers. Very, very thin lines. I'm resting my pinky or my wrist on the canvas so that I can barely touch it and get very, very thin lines. I like to curve the ends just a little bit. I'm also going to add a little back fin. I like to add a little line, and then along the left side, I'm going to add little tiny lines. They're all tilting up a little bit at an angle, but they're all along that left side. All right, we're grabbing the light blue. We're going to add some ripples to the water. I want to create a little almost curved little circle, kind of like on his head, sort of. It's almost like his nose touched the top of the water and the ripples are pulling away from that area. So the ripple's no longer right there where his nose is, it's a little bit behind it. So we're having a few little curved lines curve onto his back. And I'm rubbing a few of them with my finger, especially the ones that are very strong, meaning I had a lot of paint in my brush and they look very solid looking. I like to rub them just a little bit. There's a few of them that I just barely had any paint and I just barely skimmed the surface, and those are already kind of faded and nice looking, so I won't really bother with those. I'm also going to add some that are sort of curving around our lily pads. We want to look like the lily pads are also on top of the water, so we want to add some little ripple lines. So a little here, a little there, just kind of curving around the lily pad. Get some over here and this one in the corner. Then you can also connect a few of the ripples. So this nice big one going around the koi fish, you can have a few connecting lines on whichever lily pad is closest. So this one over here on the left is closest to him. So right now I'm just curving a few extra, then I'm going to have one that curves along the lily pad and then matches one of the curves along that edge that's going around the koi fish. So here's our little close-up. See all the fun little details. Beautiful little painting we have made. Thanks again for joining us at Paint Along Studios TV. Hope to do another painting with you again soon.